Hey Internet, it's Matt here for the Dork Lords. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We talk about all manner of dorkly things here, so whether it's sci-fi, fantasy, superheroes, we probably have a playlist about it. Feel free to check us out. Today is another in our Dork Lord of the Rings segments. And it's actually a bit of a postscript on a video I shot last week about Grond, the battering ram that took out the gates of Minas Tirith. So if you want to know more about Grond, I refer you to last week's video. But this week, I thought I would talk about what I think is the real-world inspiration behind Grond. So after I shot that video, I was watching a show about the history of Stirling Castle in Scotland. Stirling Castle, obviously one of the great Scottish castles. And an event happened there in 1304 that I think is the inspiration for Grond. It is a very Grond-esque event. Obviously, Tolkien being a student of medieval history, much less medieval military history, this would have certainly been, he would have been aware of this. Okay, so 1304, you've got King Edward I. He's the jerk that you see in the Braveheart movie, right? And he was, he liked his military. I think he was maybe more comfortable on the field of battle than he was sitting on a throne. So, sure enough, he's trying to conquer Scotland. And he's laying siege to Stirling Castle. Now, he decides to bring out the big guns, so to speak. And so he likes catapults and siege weapons. So he brings out several siege weapons, catapults, trebuchets, and inflicts a lot of damage on the castle, but the defenders hold out. So, finally, Edward I decides to bring out what essentially is the largest siege weapon of all time, at least to date, to 1304. Nothing like this had ever been seen before. And it was this enormous trebuchet. And he builds it on the field in front of Stirling Castle in full view of the defenders of the castle so they can see what's coming. Supposedly it takes 30 wagons. So imagine 30 wagons assemble on the field and they start unpacking the wagons and it becomes this immense trebuchet. Can't miss it. Supposedly it was able to shoot 300-pound stones. Okay, he gets this thing built. The Scottish defenders, seeing this thing in front of the castle, surrender. They wave the flag. We're coming out. Edward's like, yeah, no. I want to test this thing. You think I built this thing not to use it? Get back in there. So he refuses the surrender, makes the Scots go back into the castle, and then proceeds to shoot his trebuchet at the castle. Knocks out a gatehouse, knocks out a curtain wall. It's doing its job. And then finally he's like, all right, I got to play enough. Now I'll accept your surrender. So that particular siege weapon, again, this was the largest siege weapon maybe ever seen until that point. He called it Warwolf. It had its name. And obviously the reason I bring that up is because while Grond is not named Warwolf, it is a giant wolf head on a battering ram. And then, similarly, Warwolf is the largest, most intimidating, most powerful siege weapon ever in Tolkien's world. And here we have, again, this incredibly intimidating giant siege weapon named Warwolf. I would say there's a couple other things that these could be coincidental, but I think these are little interesting Easter eggs that tie into Grond and Tolkien's world that happen to be regarding this event at Stirling Castle as well. So one thing is that Edward I, when he was buried, he's buried in Westminster Abbey, but on his, the inscription in Latin, it calls him the Hammer of the Scots. That was his nickname, the Hammer of the Scots. Now Grond, if you refer you back to the video, but Grond is based on this mace that is called the Hammer of the Underworld. Again, could just be a coincidence, but I find it interesting that perhaps as Tolkien is reading this account of Warwolf and how it basically single-handedly took this castle out, that he noted that Edward I was called the Hammer of the Scots, and perhaps there's a little bit of inspiration there as well. And finally, this is maybe stretching it a little bit, but I think it's interesting. The leader of the Scots that are inside the castle and inevitably surrender, this guy, his name is William Oliphant. I'm not making that up, and I'm not even saying that that's necessarily how Tolkien came up with Oliphants, but it is notable. There's a guy named Oliphant, and of course we do see Oliphant's Makil being used in the Battle of Pelennor Fields. So they were basically right outside the gates of Minas Tirith alongside Grond. So anyway, so you've got this little confluence of interesting little statistics. You got the Hammer of the Scots, you've got Oliphants, and you have Warwolf, the greatest siege weapon in history, on the field of battle there. And so anyway, I have a feeling Grond owes something to that particular event. Anyway, this is a shorter video. I'll be doing another one very soon on Lord of the Rings, so come on back for that. We're also going to be talking some Umbrella Academy. So thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.